Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McLean. And this week, the UFC is headed to the Sajik Arena in Busan, South Korea. This is one of those fights that none of us are going to see on time if you live here in the States like I do, because I think kickoff time is 2 a.m. I've pulled a couple all-nighters this year already, but that's not going to be happening for this one. For those of you loyal listeners who are used to me having a funny little witty intro to these podcasts, I'll be honest with you this week, guys, I just don't have it. It is super difficult for me to get in front of this microphone here today because this has been a great year. All in all, first year of the podcast, getting everything rolling. It's been an absolutely phenomenal year, and we were trending in a very good direction, but getting my wallet kicked right in the nuts, right at the finish line here of 2019, it's left me a little bit without my humor this week. I'm really frustrated about last week, so let's get straight on into the recap. There's some stuff that I want to talk about. The worst betting night, more than likely, of my entire life. That was absolutely horrendous. And the problem is, I still stand by some of the things that I said and a lot of the reads that I made pre-flop, before the fights went. I feel like, so okay, let's just get right into it. I'm not going to kind of, dance around it a little bit and then break it all down later. Let's just dig straight on into it, all right? I'm not going to go over every single fight on the card because we don't have time for that. But, the night started off really fantastically for me. I first off have to apologize. I did not make Jessica Eye an official bet. I said that everyone should sprinkle her. I did hit her. She got all the way up to plus 175 right before the fight kicked off. I locked her up at plus 150, and it really hurts because we got reverse swept on this card. We didn't win a single bet. We went 0-8, and at least if I had made Jessica Eye an official pick, the podcast record would have at least then reflected that plus 150 cash that I hit, and some of you may not have tailed it if I didn't make an official pick. Do me a favor. The first thing you can do for me today is hit the like button and comment down below if you bet on Jessica Eye because of my breakdown, because if I can see some of those comments, some of you people telling me that you did pull that trigger because of the tweet that I sent out, because I told you to sprinkle it, that will at least make me feel a little bit better, because I know I cost everybody some money this week and I do feel terrible about it. So frustrating there because I had a great read on that fight. It played out exactly the way I wanted it to. There was a ton of value on Jessica Eye just being completely disrespected by that line and in that fight, and it was great to cash that one. I really thought that was a good sign of things to come. Unfortunately, it was all downhill from there. The first official pick on the card was my 2-unit banger, which, God, ever since I started doing the 2 units, it started hot and then it's just crashed and burned. Kai Kara-France. Now, this one hurts a little bit because I'm such a big fan of Moreno. I am such a big, massive fan of Moreno and the toughness that kid brings. And I preach it all the time that you can't count people out. So I think this hurts even worse because from the perspective of betting, you can't be biased. You can't let yourself being a fan of somebody get in the way of a good bet. And when I saw this matchup, I thought Kai Kara-France was going to have everything he needed to shut down the Brandon Moreno that I've seen and love. And Brandon put work in. I tweeted out right as the first round was getting going that he has leveled up. You could see it from the very beginning of that fight that Brandon Moreno had done something differently. He was not the same wild fighter that we are used to seeing, and his stand-up game was massively improved. He didn't even bother trying to take it to the mat. He was very confident in himself on the feet, and the one thing that I thought he would not be able to do, which was outstrike Kai Kara-France for 15 minutes, he did, and it looked like he did it rather easily. Really frustrating because Kai Kara-France didn't look like he had improved all that much. Now, that might just be because Brandon Moreno kind of put him in his place, put him in, a bad spot, made him shell up a little bit, but he may also just not have improved that much. And it really sucks because seeing what Volkanovski did later on in the card, you would have thought that training with that guy for an entire camp doing what he did to Max Holloway, that Kai Kara-France would have rubbed off, gotten some of that shine, and really been able to put away a guy very similar in Brandon Moreno. So really hurt. That one really hurt, especially because we laid 2 units with the juice at minus 145 and minus 150. Lost almost 3 units on that fight, and that did not feel good. Not a great way to start the night. And really, the worst thing is, the entire plan of this fight night, the entire strategy that I had going into this thing really banked on us locking up 2 easy units at the beginning. And I thought that Brandon Moreno would get wild, and I thought that he would lose himself in the fight kind of like he always does, and he just wouldn't be able to finish the absolutely tough Kai Kara-France. Did not expect him to get technical, did not expect him to play the point game and be ready to be a true mixed martial artist. Seeing that, I totally missed the boat. We're not going to see a nice big dog line on Brandon Moreno like that in some time. Actually, I saw an article came out, MMA Junkie posted it, that, is something I really wish he would have said before the fight, because I would have listened to it. He said that he wants to take things slower. He's not being quite as crazy. He wants to slow his second run in the UFC down and make sure he takes advantage of it. And you saw that in his fighting ability. So lost 3 units there to get going, dug a nice big fat hole. Well, then we got our big dog, Ben Saunders, coming in here at plus 285. And honestly, I don't regret that bet one bit. I don't regret it at all. He came out and did exactly what I wanted him to. If you were watching that fight, he went straight to Matt Brown's body. When they were standing for the little bit of time that they were, every single kick that Saunders threw was looking for the liver. Every single shot was going to the body. And I was like, Saunders knows exactly what he's doing today. I was so stoked for this. And then he got the fight to the mat. And that's the one thing that I've always said, is that Saunders' ground game is sensational. His rubber guard is fantastic, and he is so dangerous on the ground. I thought that a 48-year-old, unretired, washed-up Matt Brown wouldn't be able to take the body kicks, and I thought that he also wouldn't be able to survive on the ground. Saunders locked up a triangle, and he had it deep. And honestly, Matt Brown just looked like he toughed on through it. I'm not sure what that guy's neck is made out of, but apparently you can't choke him. So for a plus 285 underdog, someone that you're only expecting to win roughly, 20% of the time, something like that, we really got our money's worth. Ben Saunders followed the exact perfect game plan, and he put all of his skills to the test and had full control of the guy that was super dangerous and could knock him out in the first round. He even went straight back to it in the second round, and it just didn't pan out for him. Honestly, I'm totally fine with that dog shot, and it just sucks that it didn't come through. So the next fight is another one that I have to reevaluate. We had Ian Heinisch taking on Omar Akhmedov, and I've been really high on Ian ever since he got into the UFC. Now, unfortunately, he's dropped his last 2 fights, and I thought that this was the perfect spot for him to bounce back. What I'm realizing now is that Ian is more than likely the finished product. Usually when we see these guys, we try and time their evolution. You look at the younger fighters, you look at the guy that maybe have been thrown to the wolves a little bit too early, stuff like that. We try and see, well, when are those improvements in their game going to show up? When is that hard work going to start reflecting in the fight? And I thought this was the time. I thought that Ian was going to take his, loss as he tried to step into the top 10 and go back down the ladder, get the grind going, come back against Omar Akhmedov, and then remind everybody why we were so hyped on him in the first place. But instead, he was the same guy. He was the exact same fighter. Same pace, same game plan, same strikes, nothing changed. And that was incredibly disappointing for me. First off, because we laid the wood on him at minus 138, and he, at best, was a coin flip. Maybe Omari should have actually been the favorite here. And no new wrinkles. No new wrinkles in the game whatsoever. Now, granted, Omari Akhmedov is a tank, and Ian started to put it on him in that third round, but he did not have what he needed to actually put Omari away in the third round, and he needed to finish in round 3. So it was really disappointing to watch that one go the way that it did, and that was one that I do regret. I wish I hadn't pulled the trigger there, but in hindsight, that's one of those ones I feel like you've got to learn. Now, the next time Ian Heinisch comes up on a fight, I'm going to have to assess his skill set very, very closely to see whether or not we want to actually take that shot on him, because I don't think he's going to get any better. I think this is just Ian Heich. He can beat a certain type of fighter. He can beat a certain level of fighter. I don't know that he's ever going to progress beyond that. So something for us all to learn. Unfortunately, it cost me some money to learn that lesson, but hey, now we know. I got to mention this: Caitlin Vieira versus Irene Aldana. The only read that I had on that fight is that I thought the line was wide, and holy cow, did Irene show that line was way too wide. In fact, it was flipped. It was the wrong way. She knocks out Vieira in the first round, and that was impressive. I wish I had. I mean, in hindsight, seeing a big juicy dog come through. How many dogs on this card? I mean, seriously, like all of the dogs except for the ones that I took are the ones that came through. Talk about a case of zigging when you should have zagged. Holy shit. I was reversed on everything. So wrapping up the prelims, we had Geoff Neal taking on Mike Platinum Perry. And this is one where, I mean, we were on the right side. We knew Neal was going to win this fight, but dear God, who had any idea that Neal had that kind of power? I mean, I know he has power, but Perry was by far the most durable fighter he's ever fought. And it's not like he clipped him in the nose, and because that broken nose reared its ugly head, that's why Perry went down. No, he decided, I'm going to show you how much damage I can do, and just decided to end Perry's night. I cannot believe the amount of explosion that Neal has. He is going to be a problem. I've been saying that for a long time, but shit, I'm never trying to time him by decision ever again. We lose another unit there, and I mean, that's one where, as much as I didn't want to lose any more money, jaw-dropping performance. Can't even be mad at the guy, because that was a spectacle. Peter Yan comes out and does exactly what we said he was going to do against Uriah Faber, and unfortunately, Uriah Faber's chin just didn't hold up. This one I was a little disappointed in. Last time we bet Peter Yan, we took him inside the distance, and he decided to kind of hold back and not finish the fight, so we lost that one. This time we take him by decision, expecting him to do kind of the same thing. And he decides to make a statement against Uriah Faber, who has a legendary chin. Just frustrating that I wasn't able to hit, either of those. I mean, I tweeted out that I guess the lock of the night would have been a Neal and Yan parlay, and why did we just not put 10 units on that damn thing? Because we knew both of those guys were going to come through, and I do not like laying wood parlaying, guys. I like to get even money or plus money. I mean, I'll manage with like minus 120 or minus 110, something like that, but I mean, really, this entire card, it could have been defined by being a square bet card. A lot of the times, especially the main card, the only upset was an upset that I feel like 75% of MMA Twitter was on. Alexander Volkanovski was the only one that pulled the upset, and everybody that I knew was betting on him. I'm glad I passed on that one. So the big one that I want to talk about, I guess, is Marlon Moraes versus Jose Aldo. There's been a whole lot of controversy about this fight, and I think they got it right. Now, before you all start attacking me, I can hear the keys clicking already that I said I think they got it right. Marlon Moraes, he won round one. If you look at the strikes, it's very even. The significant strikes especially were even. Marlon Moraes got a big, impressive throw and ended the round on top of Jose Aldo. That's what the judges are going to remember most. If it all disappears, if it's all even, if it all comes down to nothing, Marlon Moraes got a takedown. He wins round one. So anybody arguing that round one goes to Jose Aldo, I don't think you have a leg to stand on. Round two was clearly Jose Aldo. Absolutely, clearly, 1000% Jose Aldo. There's no arguing it. So it's 1-1 going into the third. Now, the third round is kind of that situation where we've been talking about. It really depends on the judges. It depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what you value. Jose Aldo was marching Moraes down the entire third round, but he didn't do shit. He didn't throw anything. Now, Marlon Moraes had one significant strike more than Jose Aldo, but the insignificant strikes, the smaller strikes, he outlanded him a lot. Marlon Moraes outworked Jose Aldo in round three by a ton, and if you think that just because you're the chaser that you should win the fight, I don't personally agree. Marlon Moraes being on his bike was a strategy. He wasn't running. he was opening up shots. I mean, he was making Jose Aldo move, and it was very apparent that Jose Aldo was actually more tired than Moraes was in that third round. And then Marlon was just peppering him with shots. He was scoring more than Aldo was. So, I don't know, looking mean and stomping towards somebody doesn't score more than a punch, in my opinion. So I think Marlon Moraes won rounds 1 and 3. Glad we dodged that bullet. Glad we stayed away from that one. Even though, now here's the thing. For those of you who doubt me sometimes, which I know this is a fight card that you could very easily call some of my decision-making into question, even though I would have won the bet on Marlon Moraes, I am so glad we stayed away from it. If I'd parlayed Marlon Moraes with Geoff Neal or something like that, I would not have felt good going into that decision. I mean, obviously, if it cashed, I would have felt great because I'd have had the money, but I would have felt awful hearing those scorecards being read off because Marlon Moraes was the wrong side of that fight. It was so close, so razor thin. All Jose Aldo had to do was throw 2 or 3 leg kicks in the third round and he wins that fight. And I mean, if you think Jose Aldo won the fight, period, I'm not going to fight with you. I'm not going to argue with you. I believe Marlon Moraes won the fight, but it's one of those ones that's so razor thin close that I don't think either guy winning could be called a robbery. This is not one that we can label a robbery. So the next biggest disappointment of the night was our shot on Germaine de Randamie. Now again, the whole strategy for this night was we got a couple of big dogs that can show up and surprise some people. I thought we would hit one of our 2 goes to the decision props so that we would, at least have a slight positive on that. And then we were supposed to lock up our 2 units profit. So this was not supposed to be our life-saving Hail Mary play of the evening. This was supposed to be some icing on the cake for Germaine de Randamie to come through for us. And she pisses me off, man. First off, Amanda Nunes is the GOAT. All respect to Amanda Nunes. She shows us once again that she is just an incredibly well-rounded mixed martial artist. And it's phenomenal to see her work every single time. But what really frustrated me is Germaine de Randamie, in all of the lead up to this whole thing, says she doesn't want to strike with me. She's going to take me down. She's going to try to take me down. So Germaine de Randamie knows the game plan. Amanda Nunes knows the game plan. All of us know the game plan. And Germaine had no get-up game whatsoever. Her plan was to hang on to Nunes and wait for the ref to stand them up. That's the worst plan you could ever have. She worked on her takedown defense, and you could see that she would stuff the initial shots, which was improvement, and then Amanda Nunes would have a second or a third effort on her takedowns, and that's where she would get it. Now, it's also kind of frustrating because Nunes wrestling really wasn't on point. It was the trips and things like that actually got the fights to the ground. It was only 1 or 2 actual takedowns that she landed. The rest of them were all, like I said, second and third efforts, trips, and off-balance shoves, things like that to get Germaine down. Germaine's takedown defense had definitely improved, but Nunes is still not an incredible wrestler, so it was frustrating to see her not be able to stuff really any of the takedown attempts. And then once she got on her back, you would think you would drill being on your back, right? I mean, you're going, this chick's going to take me down. So let's say just for a second that I'm not improved enough in my wrestling to stop her from taking me down. What happens then? Yeah, you need a plan to get back to your feet. And praying that the referee does it for you is not a good plan. After that happened, there was no value on Germaine de Randamie. I watched the first round and went, son of a bitch. I knew I had made a mistake because my whole bet was based on the premise that Germaine had improved her anti-wrestling and her takedown and her get-up game. And it doesn't appear that she had. Maybe a little bit on the takedown defense. She improved a little bit, but not much. Definitely not enough. So she talked a real good game, and she cost me some money because I believed everything she said, and it was apparent that she was the better striker. When they were on the feet, and even with that up kick, I mean, she had her moments in that fight. That's what was crazy. Even given how bad it was, she still had her moments in that fight. Co-main event, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski. I am kind of sad to see the Blessed Express come to an end here. I'm hearing they're going to do the rematch, it sounds like, which I love that. Max Holloway's been such a phenomenal, long reigning champion. If he can come back and get a win over Volkanovski and have these guys go to a rubber match, because they're head and shoulders the best guys at featherweight, that'd be really fun. To watch these guys fight 3 times in a row for a tiebreaker to see who the champ is, I actually would very much enjoy that. It was a great fight. Volkanovski did the damn thing. I'm glad I passed because I said I couldn't step in front of Holloway. And Volkanovski was far and away the right side. I know a lot of people that bet on him, so congrats to everybody that cashed on Alexander Volkanovski. The main event, what a fight. This is where betting and being an MMA fan actually is hard sometimes. That was one of the best fights of the entire year. They put on an absolute show. And it's really upsetting because we were on the right side as far as the line is concerned. So after this shithole of a night, after losing everything that I've put my money on except for that one untracked shot on Jessica Eye, Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman have an absolute slobber knocker of a main event. And it couldn't be more even. I mean, the power shots from Usman versus the volume of Covington, it was a great fight. And several times Kamaru got hurt in that fight. You could see it on his face. Colby landed some big shots that rocked him. Colby gets his jaw broken in the second round and powers through it. I mean, that's one of those things that you got to wonder, like, how much did that take out of Colby? Because that is a very serious injury. Now, I'm not saying he would have actually won the fight, but you got to think, if you don't have a broken jaw, you feel more comfortable stepping back in the pocket. He probably would have had more success in those striking exchanges in the later rounds if his jaw wasn't busted. Usman dug deep, and he did a damn good job in this fight. His striking was severely underrated by the world and myself especially. I thought Colby was going to be far and away the better striker here, and Usman has shown some serious improvement in his striking game. And he's got more power in those hands than I expected him to. I mean, I knew he was physically strong. I knew he had some power, but he's combining that with accuracy and timing that I was not expecting in this main event. It was a tie game going to the 5th round, and that's exactly where you want to be on a big, fat, juicy dog, and especially one like Colby Covington. We had plus 160, and it was a tie fight going into the 5th round. I felt really good about that bet, and that's one, even in hindsight, I still feel good about that bet. I think we bet the right side of this one, and the broken jaw had a lot to do with what was going on. The stoppage, I know that's another big deal. That's another controversial factor, and every single one of those shots was directly to the back of the head. I don't think it mattered. This is another one of those things where it did not matter for this exact circumstance. If he had landed those shots on the side of the head or on his forehead instead, the fight still gets stopped. If it goes to a decision, Kamaru was winning round 5. Kamaru's going to win that decision. But you still want the judges to get it right. You know, they should have stopped Usman from hitting him in the back of the head repeatedly because those are illegal shots. I'm not sure how you handle that situation because that's not my job. But somebody had to have some kind of a solution to that because the whole point is you can't hit people in the back of the head. So if the champion can just pound on the back of your head like a freaking gorilla and get the stoppage and retain his belt, well, what are we doing then? Just throw the rule book out the window, right? So, hell of a fight, incredibly entertaining, very frustrating though, because I thought Colby was going to be the one to prevail in round 5. And that completes the reverse sweep. 0-8. 0-8 for minus 9.33 units. It's funny because in hindsight, I feel like all of these things were very reasonable. Every single one of those bets was very reasonable. Kai Kara France, given what I saw, given what we knew about Brandon Moreno, yes, I wish I hadn't made it a 2-unit bet, but I definitely still would have been on the side of Kai Kara France. It's only in hindsight that we know Moreno has turned a corner. Ben Saunders, I love that bet. Even though we lost it, I love that bet. We had every opportunity to cash it. He almost got it done for us. Ian Heinisch, that's another one that I feel like maybe I could have passed, but in reality, given what we thought we knew, we expected him to have a serious bounce back spot, and he just didn't show up. I mean, now we know better. Now we're not going to look for him to be changing his game or doing anything differently. Geoff Neal by decision. I just drastically underestimated Geoff Neal. That's one where I didn't overestimate Perry's durability because he's shown nothing but durability. But holy shit, did I underestimate Neal's power. Peter Yan, that's the one where it was closest. We knew that could happen. We absolutely knew that could happen. There was good value on it going to decision, leaning on Faber's durability. It just didn't quite get there. And then Germaine de Randamie, again, that's only a hindsight situation. She said all the right things. She showed all the right things in her fights leading up to it. Everything was there. She had her moments. She just didn't make the adjustments that she needed to and that we expected her to. Colby Covington, loved that bet. Absolutely loved that bet. He just didn't get it done. There was plenty of value on that plus 160. So talking through it all, I know it never feels good to lose money. I hope some of you feel at least a little bit better, a little bit vindicated that not every single bet that we pulled the trigger on last week was an awful one. I really hope some of you hit Jessica I, and I apologize for not making that an official bet. I think that the biggest issue for me, obviously, is that the record suffered because of me not making that an official pick, and that hurts to not get that 1.5 units back. I know it's only a little bit, and that's a giant pile of red and negative that we just went through, but that extra little 1.5 units would at least help me feel a little better right now. Let's roll on. We can put that in the dust. I'm sorry that took so long, but it was a really epic card. We had a lot of bets, a lot to talk about, and a phenomenal night of fights. So if you were just listening to the podcast as a fan and you didn't actually watch the fights or anything like that, you probably had the best night out of all of us. And I want to give a couple of shout outs here. We have new followers, new subscribers over on YouTube. John BBB, Thomas Donegan. We have Sean Shrokey. We've got Sneaky Pip. We have F. Snolls 38. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say that. I'm trying to figure out the way you break that down so it makes a little bit more sense, but can't quite get there, bud. Sorry about that. Welcome to the Die Hard MMA podcast. Thank you all so much for subscribing. I love getting some new subscribers every couple of weeks here. It doesn't look like we are going to hit my goal, unfortunately. I was hoping we would get to, I want to say I said 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year with 385, so fell short of that big time, but hopefully we can make that a goal for next year. 2020 coming right around the corner. There's going to be lots and lots of good shit coming in 2020, especially with all those fight announcements. There's plenty of opportunities to make some money. So let's talk about the record. That brings the 2019 record for the Die Hard MMA podcast to 139 to 137. That's 139 wins, 137 losses for plus 15.78 units. That is right. We have been hitting so many big fat ass underdog lines that even with having only 2 more correct picks than wrong picks, we are up 15 freaking units. Now, that's not nearly as fun as saying we're up 25 or 30 units, but all in all, considering I'm not a professional sports bettor, not bad. Still a profitable year. And we're going to do our very best to get some of that back on Saturday. Let's get into the picks. Now, just so everybody knows, this is going to be one of those nights where I don't have a lot to say on a lot of these fights. We are going to South Korea, and they are stacking the card with local flair and talent. Because of that, there are a lot of fighters that we may not necessarily be all that familiar with, and I will be honest with you, there's a lot of fights that I feel uncomfortable with, and I don't have a great read on. So we're going to skim over a lot of these and then spend a little bit of time on the ones that we actually do feel comfortable or have a read on. The first fight of the night is going to be Heili Alateng taking on Ryan Benoit. Now, Alateng is 13-7-1, and Benoit is 10-5. Alateng is making his second appearance in the octagon, and he's going to be on home turf here. Now, Benoit has had a little bit of a rocky road in the UFC. He's basically alternated wins and losses ever since he got in, and this is his loss time. He's coming off a KO head kick win and looking to, really get rolling here. Now, it's interesting. Usually when the UFC goes to places, they try to cater to the home crowd. They really try to give some good matchups to the hometown crowd so their boys can win and they can have a good night. I really almost feel like the UFC is trying to springboard off a lot of these fighters. I feel like a lot of the outside fighters being brought in are the ones who are more than likely going to and or expected to win. It's a little bit weird. I feel like it's kind of a reverse marketing move. They're like, hey, here's your boy. Now here's the guy that we think will smash him. It's not, not giving layups to the guys that the hometown crowd is going to be cheering for. It's a little weird. This is one where I feel like Ryan Benoit's got a good shot of coming through. Alateng's fresh-faced, brand new to the UFC, really, and doesn't really have much to show as far as his competition goes. He is from China, and Benoit, even though he's had a rough go of it in the UFC, has fought a very high level of competition. In fact, he's got a TKO win over Sergio Pettis. He dropped a split decision to Brandon Moreno, but I mean, we know how split decisions go. If that goes his way, he's on a 3-fight win streak. So this is a very, very tight fight, and the line reflects that. Benoit is a minus 115 favorite. The comeback is an even money plus 100 dog on Heili Alateng, and I'm going nowhere near this one. The second fight on the card is another one of these ones that I have less than no opinion of. We've got a women's fight between Amanda Lemos and Miranda Granger. Lemos is 6-1-1 and 1. 6-1 and 1. Miranda Granger on the flip side of this thing is an undefeated 7-0. Amanda made her UFC Octagon debut in 2017 and immediately got blasted by Leslie Smith. I don't know anything about her. I don't know where she has been for the last couple of years. I'm not sure if she got popped by USADA. I'm not sure if she has been training under Anderson Silva this entire time. I have no clue what she has been doing, so I have no way of betting her. All I know is that she took out some low-level chicks, got to the UFC, faced someone who's UFC caliber, and got blasted in the second round. Miranda Granger, you may remember from that fight with Hannah Goldie back in August. She got a unanimous decision win and was actually very impressive. I want to say she was the underdog in that fight. Hannah Goldie was the one that she had to be the favorite. I'm going off of memory here. I apologize, but I believe Hannah Goldie was the favorite and Granger was a bit of an upset. So, no read on this one. Didn't spend a lot of time looking into it. Miranda Granger is a giant favorite. She's about minus 190 to Amanda Lemos is plus 165. This is one of those ones where it's absolutely dangerous. If I felt better about it, I'd say parlay Miranda Granger, but we don't know anything about where Amanda Lemos has been. For all we know, she's going to come back and kick some serious ass, but it really seems like this is a spot where Granger's going to be able to grind her way to another victory. The next fight is one that belongs much higher on the card. I've heard a couple of people talk about how the stacking on this card is a little bit strange, and I absolutely agree, but I also think part of that is due to, again, kind of catering to the local flavor. This is a fight that would absolutely be on the main card of pretty much any other card, but because neither of these guys are, Asian, essentially, they're not going to put it that high on the card because the local fans probably don't even give a fuck. Raoni Barcelos is taking on Said Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov. There we go. Thank you. Got it. So Hani, y'all know about Hani. We've talked about Hani a lot. This dude is an absolute beast. 14-1. He's riding a massive win streak right now. Said himself in the same boat, 13-1, and his last loss was in 2014. Actually, both these guys, their last losses were in 2014. This is a phenomenal fight. Absolutely phenomenal fight, and I can't wait to see. Raoni Barcelos is a wicked Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. He's got world-class submissions, really fast hands, crisp boxing, and Said on the other side of this thing is your classic Russian grinder with a lot of spinning shit mixed in. I mean, he's got incredible wrestling, good gas tank. He's really long, really rangy. These guys are going to match each other physically speaking. Said is 1 inch taller, but very long, lanky builds for both of them. This is a great fight. I know a bunch of people that are actually on Said, but I can't bring myself to pull the trigger. If you got in on that opening line of plus 145 when Said first came out, you absolutely got the right side. But now that it's more of a pick'em, I mean, you can only get plus 105 on Said right now. He's down to minus 105 in certain spots. Raoni Barcelos is minus 120, minus 115. I lean Raoni. I lean Raoni Barcelos just because I think that he will be able to control the distance, and because he's mostly a boxing specialist, he'll be getting in and getting out, and I don't think that Said is going to be able to hold him down and be able to grind him out, so I think it's going to be a very, very closely contested fight. I do think this is going to end up going to decision. I don't think either of these guys... scratch that. Both of these guys are capable of finishing. both of them, I think, are too tough in this situation. I think they'll be too evenly matched for them to get the finish over the other. But I think that Hani is going to be able to outpoint Saeed over the course of 15 minutes. I do not believe in that enough to actually bet on it, but you bet when I'm going to do that $5 parlay of the entire card, my vote will be on Hani Barcelos. Now the next fight, ooh baby, this next fight is my main event. We've got the flyweight division, Alexandre Pantoja taking on Matt Schnell. Oh boy, Pantoja 21-4 to Matt Danger Schnell's 14-4. This is a hell of a fight. So Pantoja was on a 3-fight win streak and ran into Davis and Figueiredo when he got derailed. Absolute beast. The dude's a machine. I love Alexandre Pantoja. And we've talked about him a decent amount this year as well, since he's had 2 fights. He KO'd Wilson Hayes earlier in the year, and then had that real close-fought, hard decision with Davis and Figueiredo, which he got us on. So Matt Danger Schnell, some of y'all remember that this is one of my favorite upcoming prospects. He's training out of American Top Team. He is 29 years old. And he is showing massive leaps and bounds of improvement every single fight out. This is far and away the highest level opponent that he has ever fought in Alexandre Pantoja. The cannibal does not joke around. He's a Brazilian killer, and he's got a shit ton of experience under his belt. He's only 29 years old himself, mind you. So let's take a look at some of these stats. We've got Alexandre Pantoja, 7 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 6 wins by decision. He's incredibly well-rounded. And in the UFC, he's really started to put it together. He won a split decision for his debut, but then he chokes out his next opponent in Neil Seery. And he's recently been started finishing people. We talked about the Wilson Hayes KO. Now, we know Wilson Hayes is flawed, but it was a phenomenal performance. He got it done in just over 2 minutes. Matt Schnell on the flip side of this thing, same thing. He's really starting to figure it out. He had a real rough run right in his entrance to the UFC. He got knocked out twice by Rob Font, Hector Sandoval, but then he got it together. He started working on his game, evolving, improving, gets a couple decision wins, and then he starts choking people out. Chokes out Luis Smoka, chokes out Jordan Espinoza, and really I just think that this guy is incredibly underrated at this point. My main piece for having some action on Matt Danger Schnell in this spot is the hand speed difference. I think he's going to be faster than Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja likes to use some like winging types of punches, hooks, things like that. Matt Danger Schnell attacks straight down the center line. He's going to be faster, and I think he's going to be able to land quicker and more often. Now, he has been knocked out twice. Pantoja's got some serious power in his hands. Don't get me wrong. I understand this is a step up in competition. Normally speaking, I like to fade people in said step up in competition. However, we're getting the line value on Matt Danger Schnell here. He's got some serious pop on his hands as well. He can rock his opponents, he can hurt them, and he is wicked on the ground. Matt Schnell is no joke on the mat. So if he can get this thing to the ground, he's going to be very, very scrambly, very, very live. If he can rock Pantoja, he can lock up a choke. On top of that, I think he actually stands a decent chance of surviving on the feet. I would feel more comfortable if this thing hit the mat, but he's definitely not a fish out of water on the feet. I think we've got all kinds of value, and I tweeted this out a little bit earlier. I'm going to roll with Danger Matt Schnell at plus 179. Now, I apparently have mistimed that. You can now get him at plus 180 or plus 185 across the board. I expected money to be coming in on Schnell as a dog, more so than more people just laying the wood with Pantoja. We're going to take some dog shots this week, folks. We're going to get back to what really got us here. If we can take a couple of dog shots, 3 or 4 dog shots this weekend and win 2 of them and lock up a nice little win to recover some of that damage in the new year strong, that's kind of what we're looking for. I think we have a very, very live dog here in Matt Danger Schnell, and I am not going to be afraid to pull that trigger. Our next fight is up in the lightweight division where Jun-yong Ma, the maestro, takes on Omar Antonio Morales Ferrer. Now, this is a fight kind of like what I was talking about. You would think that Jun-yong Ma would be the local flavor. You would think he'd be the guy that the UFC is going, hey, check out your boy. Let's get him a win, especially since he's coming off of 2 losses. But no, they are throwing him to a complete monster. So Jun-yong Ma, He's had 2 fights in 2019, and both of those have ended in KOs. He got KO'd in the very first round by Devontae Smith in February, comes back in Honest and gets TKO'd by Scott Holtzman. So we all know what I think about quick turnarounds. He was KO'd last in August, and 2 KOs in 1 year. I mean, that's already bad. He should be sitting the rest of the year out as far as just his brain recovering. But he's not. He's back just 6 months later, and he's taken on an absolute beast. Now, it's also another fact we need to take notice of is that those aren't his only 2 KO losses. He's been KO'd 4 times in his career. He may be having some chin issues, and it's something we need to very seriously consider. Now, Omar Antonio on the flip side of this thing, this dude trains out of Hard Knocks 365. He's working with, that's right, Kamaru Usman, the guy that defended the belt last weekend. He is 8-0, undefeated. He's got 2 knockouts and 4 submissions on his record, and I am phenomenally blown away by this guy. I mean, he had his first big time fight was in Bellator in 2018, where he won by KO. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, and he TKO'd the guy in the second round. I mean, this dude looks like he's the complete package. So rather than Dong-Young Ma, 31 years old, getting the shine, they're giving this dude who trains with the beast Usman and looks like he's another brick shit house. That's exactly what this guy is. And they are throwing Ma to the wolves. I mean, Ma has a tendency to be very low paced, low output, and obviously he has chin issues. They're giving him a guy who trains with Usman, has a solid wrestling base, and I really expect ground and pound here. That's more often than not, I think that's what's going to be happening here. I think Omar comes in here. I think it's relatively standard on the feet until Omar gets a takedown or rocks Ma, and then when it hits the mat, I'm expecting another TKO stoppage. I do not like how this looks for Dong-Young Ma, and I think that we can actually take advantage of that. Morales is sitting around minus 185 right now, minus 200, and y'all know what I like to do in that range. Let's put a pin in Omar Morales. Our next fight has me a little confused. I am scratching my head looking at this one. So we have Suman Mokhtarian taking on Seung-Woo Choi. Suman Mokhtarian is 8-1-0. Seung-Woo Choi is 7-3-0. And this is one of those, I mean, it's kind of the opposite of what I was talking about before. It seems like they're getting Choi a get-right fight. He is 0-2 in the UFC. He's lost to Masfar Evloev, which, no shame there, dude's a fucking beast. And then he got choked out by Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker, who also appears to be a complete beast and is trending upward. So he's 0-2 in the UFC, and he's 7-3 overall. Not bad losses, but still, he's 0-2. Suman Mokhtarian is 8-1, and his only loss is a TKO to Sadiq Yusuff. He lost his UFC debut as well. So both of these guys are trying to get their first octagon win. It's not a stretch to think that loser gets walking papers here. And it's a little bit crazy to me to look at this line and see that Choi is a minus 275 favorite. The comeback on Mokhtarian is plus 225. And I don't know. I don't have a good lean on this one. I don't have a good opinion on this one. I just don't think the line should necessarily be that wide. This is not one that I spent a lot of time on. I just wanted to mention that I feel like this line is a little bit out of control for an 0-2 fighter. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one as the fights get a little bit closer. I don't know that I'll pull the trigger on Suman Mokhtarian, but at the same time, I feel like this is potentially an opportunity. I know neither of these guys have really been tested. I know that neither of these guys are going to go down easy in this particular fight because they understand what's on the line here. And the line very, very much confuses me. So we get to the last fight of the prelims, and now we have got a fun one. They're bringing out the big boys. Ciryl Gane taking on Tanner the Bulldozer Boser. Canada is being represented on this fight card surprisingly strongly. They've got 3 fighters coming on this one, but what a shit show. So this is the widest line. If any of you remember those names, obviously this is the widest line on the card. Ciryl Gane opened up as a minus 800 favorite with Tanner Boser being plus 550. Somehow, some way, all the money so far has come in on Tanner Boser. I do not understand this. So Gane is the next big thing after Francis Ngannou. He's got fast hands. He's huge. He's a brick shit house. He's an Adonis. He's another one of these guys that looks like he's been chiseled out of marble. And he's got a slick submission game. I mean, he just kind of does what he wants to do to people in the UFC so far. He's fought a very low level of competition. They are taking him slow, but he is really just doing whatever he wants. And for a big man, he's got a serious submission offense, which I love seeing. My introduction to mixed martial arts was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself. I did that far before any kind of striking, so BJJ always has a soft spot in my heart. And seeing this giant-ass man, Frank Mir was my first ever favorite fighter because he was mostly a submission fighter and really one of the only heavyweight fighters to be able to pull off shit like arm bars. Nobody else can move like that on the ground. I love Ciryl Gane. He's so much fun to watch. Tanner Boser on the flip side of this thing is he's the second coming of Roy Nelson, man. This guy is he's a bear, and I don't mean that like he'll maul you. I mean that like a furry hairy Batman. He's a bear. He has I mean, I don't know how else to say it. He looks a lot like Roy Nelson. He's got a big old fuzzy beard. I mean, he seems to be a nice guy, which I love. He seems to be in a bit of a good mood all the time. He's actually got a really underrated skill set. So here's the thing. I know I've been disrespectful so far. I'm trying to have a little bit of fun, but Boser's actually not half bad. He beats guys that have massive physical advantages over him because of his work ethic and because of the skills that he's accrued as a fighter. I have nothing but respect for a guy like that. When you've got a guy who is at a disadvantage because he just is not genetically gifted, who works his ass off to be competitive with the guys who have that advantage, I love that. I will always cheer for that guy. So he's got a record of 17-5, 8 wins by KO, TKO, 2 submissions, and then he's gone to decision 7 times. This is a fight that, I mean, what can you say? There's no way in hell I'm betting Tanner Boser. I think Ciryl Gane keeps this thing at distance. He uses his range, and he just bops up Boser for as long as he feels like, and then takes it to the ground. I mean, it would be absolutely insane. Absolutely freaking insane if Tanner Boser was able to work Ciryl Gane's legs and get a decision win, or even like a leg TKO or something like that when he wore out. That would be maybe one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life if he pulls that off. Boser wins inside the distance is somehow only plus 790, so maybe they're thinking that might be his best path to victory, because yeah, I mean he's plus 1150 to win this thing by 3-round decision. No one thinks he's going to win this by decision. Gane inside the distance is minus 210, if that tells you anything. This is a complete shit show. Stay away. I mean, if you want to sprinkle a shot on Boser, Godspeed, more power to you. I don't know if he can survive Ciryl Gane for a full 15 minutes. I mean, I know the man is tough as shit and can take a beating, but I mean, Dontel Mays did well to survive in Gane's last fight. If Ciryl Gane slows down, maybe Tanner is able to get in there and score some points, but I don't know if he's got the wrestling defense to keep this thing off the mat. And if he's under Gane, I expect Gane to choke him out. So I'm completely avoiding this one, but it should be really fun to watch. All right, we're going back down to the little guys next. We're at bantamweight. We have got Mr. Perfect Kyung-ho Kang taking on Ping-Wan Liu. So Kang, Mr. Perfect, is on a 2-fight win streak. He got the layup of a fight against Teruta Ishihara in February, and then he won that split decision over our live ass freaking dog, Brandon Davis, which really pissed me off. That was the one where Brandon Davis broke me, where I threw him in that low IQ trash bin that we're never going to touch again. He's gone to split decision with Ricardo Ramos. Before that, he was on a 3-fight win streak. I mean, dude's legit. I know you're going to hear this on every single MMA podcast you listen to, but he took a break because he had his, country mandated service, and he took a break, comes back, and has really just picked up right where he left off. He dipped his toe back in with his first UFC fight against Guido Canetti and choked him out in the first round. It was like, oh shit, all right. So they gave him Ricardo Ramos, and he went the distance with him and almost won the thing. This dude is no joke. He's very well rounded, got a good grappling skill set. The only thing that I kind of think I don't like about him is that he tends to fight close. If he doesn't get the submission, 11 of his 16 wins have come by submission. If he doesn't get that submission, he does tend to fight very, very evenly with his opponents. Ping-Wan Liu fights out of Team Alpha Male, and this is going to be his 4th performance inside the UFC. He had his first 2 wins, and then he got KO'd brutally in the 3rd round by Jonathan Hernandez. Now that's another one that's not a bad loss. Hernandez he's looking pretty good himself. So Ping-Wan Liu, he's at a good camp. He's a very talented fighter, and I would say he's mostly a stand-up guy, but at the same time, he does have a decent number of submissions on his record, although that was against a low level of competition. I kind of feel like this is almost a striker versus grappler situation. I think if it goes to the ground, Mr. Perfect, Kang has the advantage, but if it stays standing, it's going to be very, very close, and Liu working out at Alpha Male may have the edge there, although, like I said, it's going to be close. I keep saying that, I apologize, but really, that's how I feel about this fight. So I'm not a fan of where the line sits for this one, simply because I do think it's going to be a very, very close decision. I think there's some value on Liu, really. The line opened up with Kang being a minus 240 favorite, the comeback plus 200 on Ping-Wan Liu, and money has come in on Kang. We actually have a reverse line movement type of situation. 54% of the money is on Liu. 54% of the bets, whatever you want to say, is on Liu. And then 46% on Kang has pushed him down to being minus 250, minus 260. So the money that the books respect, the bigger money, the sharp money, is coming in on Kang, even though more of it is coming in on Liu, or more tickets at least is coming in on Liu. And I just don't know how to feel about this one. I don't feel comfortable playing Kang at minus 250, minus 260, and I feel like this might actually be a bounce back spot for Liu. I am a fan of Team Alpha Male. I know they've got their bumps in the road and things like that, but with the leader of Team Alpha Male getting knocked out in his last fight, everybody's going to be looking for something. You know what I mean? This might be a rally spot where Liu can get a win for his coach after Faber just got floored by Jan. On top of that, he is only 26 years old. Kang is 32. He's kind of in his fighting prime, whereas Liu is still very much developing, and the kid's got all the raw talent that you'd ever want in a fighter. So, too hairy, too close. I think Kang wins, but I don't think it's going to be comfortable. I think if you bet Liu, you would get quote-unquote value on that bet, but you might not ever end up actually cashing that ticket. So I'm going to stay away from it. All right, our next fight is one that I'm actually very, very eager to talk about. We have got a middleweight fight between Park Jun-yong versus Marc-Andre Barriault. And Park is an interesting fighter. I've spent a decent chunk of time studying this guy. He is 28 years old. He's 10-4, 5 knockouts, 3 submissions, 2 decision wins. He has not ever been knocked out. Marc-Andre Barriault on the other side of this thing is one of the more disappointing fighters that I have bet on. He reminds me very, very much of my guy Ian the Hurricane Heinz, where I've expected more from him. He steps into the cage, and now granted, this was back when I didn't really like Andrew Sanchez. I thought he should beat Sanchez at his own game. He drops that fight. Okay, fair enough. Then he faces Krzysztof Jotko. I'm not a big fan of Krzysztof Jotko, and I really thought that he was on his way out. However, he does just enough to get the win over Barriault, and Barriault doesn't show any improvements from one fight to the other, even though he's training at some high-level gyms like TriStar. He seems to have peaked. At 29 years old, I think we are looking at the final Marc-Andre Barriault. I just don't think he's going to get much better than this. It's exactly like Heinz. I do not think that he is going to improve. I don't think he's going to skyrocket to that championship level or turn over some new leaf that we haven't seen. He's a grinder. He has good boxing. He has good forward pressure and a good gas tank. He's going to rough you up, try and pin you up against the cage, and then beat you up on the fence. And that's all he's got. If he can't overwhelm you in that kind of a way and KO you, then he might win a decision by having forward pressure and being able to be the aggressive fighter. He's only KO'd people on the regional scene ever since he got up to the big show. I mean, Sanchez and Jocko, they're tough guys. I mean, I've got to give them their due there. That's not entirely all Barriault's fault. It's not like those are guys that you would expect him to be able to KO, but he obviously doesn't have that kind of power at the higher level, or at least it's not translating at this point. Jun-yong Park, this guy fires some bombs, man. His first fight in the octagon was in August, and he fought Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, and Fluffy got the choke. But Park was bombing on that dude. I mean, he's got good takedown defense, or I guess decent takedown defense. The problem was when Fluffy got his back, he wasn't able to defend after a while. It looked like in the second round he really started to gas out hard because of all the grappling exchanges, and then his sub-D went basically out the window. I don't expect that to be a problem here against Marc-Andre, though, because Marc-Andre Barriault wants to pin you up against the fence. He doesn't actually want to complete the takedown and put you on the ground. Now, if Barriault gets on top of Park, I think he might be able to TKO him, but I don't believe he's got the sense to actually put Park on his back. I think Barriault's going to go back in his normal bag of tricks. He's going to want to grind him. He's going to want to put him up against the cage, get some elbows in his face, and keep this thing at boxing range or dirty boxing in the clinch or up against the fence. The problem with that is that's exactly Park's wheelhouse. Park has some excellent hands, very fast hand speed, good solid power, and if this is a boxing match, I think Park could actually score a knockout here. Barriault hasn't shown me the things in any of the fights that he's been in that leads me to believe he's going to take advantage of the hole that is Park's grappling game. And I can't trust him to do it. I first looked at this fight, and I have to show a little bit of self-control here, because my very first thing was bet Barriault. I was like, duh, of course he can take Park down and ground and pound this dude out. This dude gasses out in the second round. Barriault's fresh in the third. Barriault can late TKO this guy with no problem. And then I went back and I watched the tape, and I remembered, oh shit, yeah, Barriault doesn't follow my game plan. Barriault does not do what I tell him to, and he usually doesn't even do what he should do. So he's probably not going to follow the fight plan that would bring him a win here. He's probably just going to keep doing what he does. And because I can't trust Barriault, I cannot bet him. I will not make the same mistake that I made with Ian Heinz last week. If Barriault wins this thing, I'm not even going to feel bad about it. I cannot bet this guy. He will not do what you need him to do in a fight. He will get suckered into a slugfest, and if he gets suckered into a slugfest with Park, not only will he stand a good chance to lose the fight, he stands a good chance of getting knocked out. So this one will be fun to watch. I am keeping my money tucked safely away from this one. I am going nowhere near Barriault. All right, our next fight is Jung, who is 12-2, making his second UFC appearance, taking on Mike Rodriguez, who is 10-4, and is making his fourth UFC appearance. This is another one that, once again, I'm not going to lie, I've spent no time looking into. I need to look into this one a little bit, because when you've got a kid like Jung taking on a guy like Rodriguez who has floundered a little bit in the octagon, this does actually seem like the type of spot where the UFC is trying to set their boy up with a win. Now, Mike Rodriguez is a slight favorite at this point. He opened up -115. He's been bet up to about -120, -125. So you can get +100 or +105 on Jung, and I think that's the side that the UFC is on. So I do really want to put a pin in this one and take a little bit closer of a look at it, because this kid's got some hands. He's got 9 of his 12 wins by KO, and this is a big boy fight. We're looking at light heavyweights here. Mike Rodriguez, he's got a lot of KOs as well. He's got some heavy hands himself. He's coming off of the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Season 1. He got into the UFC and fought Brown Bear Devin Clark and got ground out. I mean, no surprise there. That's a really stiff test for your first UFC fight. He bounces back with a first round KO. So, I mean, dude's got serious power. He's got power that can translate up at the top level, and this fight, I think, is gonna be a banger. Now, he did only knock out Adam Milstead, who, relatively speaking, may not actually be UFC caliber, so never mind. Maybe I'll go back on that. Mike Rodriguez, his 2 losses, Devin Clark, obviously a good grappler, obviously explosive, a good athlete, so okay, not a bad win. His win over Adam Milstead is And then his loss to John Allen Arte also is nah. So we've got these big 205-pound boys, and the UFC is looking for them to bang and see who falls first. I would be very tempted to go with the hometown kid. I'm going to need to do some more research, like I said, so we're steering clear of this one, but keep an eye out on Twitter later for that one. At Diehard MMA Pod is the Twitter handle. As always, come give me a follow, hit me up, let's talk some fights, and let's move right along. Our next fight is one that has me incredibly intrigued. We have Do-Ho Choi. The Korean Superboy is making his return to the octagon. We have not seen this guy since he suffered a brutal knockout loss to Jeremy Stephens in January of 2018. Can you believe it? We haven't seen Do-Ho Choi since freaking 2018. Now, I have not really kept tabs on this kid, but I can't believe it's been that long. I'm actually really shocked to see that it's been so damn long since he's been in the UFC. I mean, he took a bad, brutal KO. I'm curious what he's been up to. He's only 28 years old, so he's still very young, but he's taken a whole lot of damage. He steps into the UFC, and everyone thought he was just going to maul everybody. He was the next John Jones, freaking rocket ship straight to the top of the division. KOs 3 guys on his way up. Runs into Cub Swanson. That's the spot where everyone's going, you know what, it's first L time, right? He's going to take on his first ever savvy veteran, and sure enough, Cub puts it on him. They had a hell of a war at UFC 206. That was a fun freaking fight to watch, and Cub really put this kid back in his place. But instead of letting him regroup, instead of giving him time to, well, I mean, I guess they gave him time, sorry, but instead of giving him a better opponent, something like that, that was in 2016. The next fight he gets is Jeremy Little Heathen Stephens. So he takes 2 years off, or I guess just a little over a year off, and they bring him back against Jeremy Stephens, who is probably a better fighter and more dangerous than Cub at this stage. And sure enough, kid gets KO'd badly. And now we haven't seen him for another year. Another 2 years almost. Not sure what's going on. You got to wonder where his confidence is at. He took a shit ton of damage from Cub Swanson and got mauled by that guy in 2016. He took a ton of damage and then actually got KO'd flat by Jeremy Stephens. So now maybe he's coming back and he's been working his ass off this whole time. Maybe he's matured. He's had wrinkles to his game. You got to wonder if his confidence is shot. You got to wonder, what exactly he has been up to all this time. And yeah, we can follow him on social media and stuff like that. It looks like he got his jiu-jitsu brown belt, stuff like that. But I mean, we know next to nothing about where he is physically, mentally. I mean, you got to think that he's going to improve. But so, okay, cards on the table. The one thing I saw from the Korean Superboy is that overhand rights are money. Straight money. He ate so many overhand rights from Cub Swanson, it was ridiculous. Jeremy Stephens clipped him with a right elbow, and then I think the overhand right was actually what did him in. The right was the one that actually knocked him down and was the beginning of the end for him. I think he's got a very severe deficiency in his striking game. He's very confident, and he keeps his hands down. He relies on his speed and his athleticism to avoid shots rather than actually defending them. So he kind of has tall man defense. Tall man defense is when you're backing up and you stick your chin up in the air just to try to get out of the way of the shot. It's almost like he has that because he's confident in his speed, because he's confident in his range and his distance management. But he keeps getting hit. And now we're seeing, even after a 1.5 year layoff, that his chin wasn't good enough to stand up to a guy like Stephens. And we've all seen what happens when Jeremy Stephens crushes somebody's skull. There's a chance he could never be the same again. We're going to flip this thing over to Charles Air Jourdain, which, I see what you did there. Air Jordan. All right, that's cute. Charles Jourdain. He comes into us from the TKO promotion. He had a long running stint on there in which he had a lot of success. 9 wins, 3 KOs, 3 submissions. His only 2 losses were the only 2 fights that went to decision, and one of those was in the UFC against Desmond Green. Now, Des Green he's another one of these guys training out of Hard Knocks 365. That was a great fight. That was absolutely an excellent fight, and they were going at it hard. The other thing was, he was on short notice for that fight. He stepped up into the lightweight division for that fight as well. This fight is taking place at featherweight, I believe, at 145. So he's going to be at his more natural weight class. And I tweeted out a picture a little bit earlier. This kid is fucking jacked. Nobody told him that he's coming in to lose to Doo-ho Choi. Nobody told him that he's supposed to be the kid that Doo-ho Choi gets right on, because he is in the best shape of his life by a long shot. And what I saw from him in the fight with Desmond Green, even though he lost that fight, was serious athleticism and speed. Coming in on short notice with no time to prep, with no game plan, he had some serious striking ability. He chained stuff together very, very well. And he has a lot of really slick attacks. He finishes combos up with like spinning shots. I mean, he does a lot that I'm very, very pleased with and very impressed with. If you haven't figured it out already, I am rolling the dice on the big dog Charles Jourdain. He's fighting in his correct weight class. He's in the best shape of his life. Doo-ho Choi has been gone for 2 straight freaking years, and even though Charles Jourdain is only in the second fight of his UFC career, he got all the octagon jitters out of the way, and he is hungry to make a statement. He is the kind of guy that I think he's being drastically underrated here. And I think for a kid that we haven't seen in 2 years and is on a 2-fight skid, and there's little to no video of what he's been doing, what he looks like, what he's been working on out there, I'm going to take this shot. I don't think I can help myself. I got Charles Jourdain. He's at plus 245 right now, and I just don't understand how the line can be that wide based on what we've seen recently from Doo-ho Choi. And the fact that Jourdain is the more active current fighter right now, I like when they're getting fights. I like when they're in there a lot, mixing it up. This will be the 3rd fight of his in 2019, and it's not like he took a ton of damage or anything. He showed a good chin, he showed durability, and he showed a lot of toughness and a real mean streak that I like to see. I'm looking forward to this fight. I've got to take that plus 245 on the straight fade that Doo-ho Choi may not be what we thought he was, or even if he is what we thought he was, if he engages Jourdain in a brawl, there's a very good chance that he goes to sleep. And at 245, I will roll that puncher's chance. We have reached the co-main event of the evening, where really becoming one of my favorite fighters to bet on, he is bouncing back into the cage for a big, big fight. We're in the 205-pound division, where Volkan, no time Oezdemir, is taking on Alexander Rakić. And this, folks, is a fight. Oezdemir is no time because he stepped into the octagon and knocked a shit ton of people out in the first round. And I say a shit ton, I mean like 2. But still, it was enough to get him the nickname. The man woke everybody up. Everyone thought that he was a bum. Everybody thought he didn't have shit. And then he was dropping people in less than a minute. He gets elevated immediately to tighter contender status because 205 is so thin at this point. He faces Daniel Cormier, gets taken down, roughed up, and DC does what DC does. He gets submitted by Anthony Smith, and then he loses a very closely contested decision to Dominic Reyes, which he won. Going back and rewatching that fight, studying for this thing, I thought Oezdemir won that fight when I bet on him in March, and I thought that I'm sorry, I mixed that up. We bet on Dominic Reyes. We laid the wood on Dominic Reyes as a minus 200 favorite, and I thought that Oezdemir won even having bet on Dominic Reyes. I thought I lost my money. We got really, really lucky because watching it again, Volkan definitely won this fight. And then we cashed in on that guy coming back against Ilir Latifi, the fight that we waited basically all of 2019 for, and cashed easily when he wrecked Latifi in round 2. Oezdemir is a fun fighter to watch. He's always in entertaining fights, and This guy is really working to get back into title contention. You can tell he is working on rounding out his mixed martial arts game. He recently got his purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he is working on his wrestling. Now he trains out of Hard Knocks 365, like we talked about. That's where Usman trains out of. A lot of heavy, high-caliber grapplers wrestle over there. So this guy went from being a phenomenal power puncher, training partner, a la kind of a Chuck Liddell type of guy that got his shot in the big show after helping other people prep for fights, and he made good on it. Well, now he's going, oh, I got roughed up by Anthony Smith. I got roughed up by Daniel Cormier. Now I see what a title challenger or a title level fighter looks like. I got to get there. And it looks to me like he's working on it. The way he controlled the distance against Dominic Reyes and roughed Reyes' face up in that fight, the way he mixed in the takedowns, the way he mixed in the kicks, he had this really cool little counter leg kick that he did. Every single time Dominic Reyes threw a body kick, he would knock his back leg out from under him with a leg kick. His fight IQ is rapidly improving. And I think that this guy is a bet-on fighter moving forward, and the more well-rounded he gets, the more I start to believe that we might actually see him challenge for a title again at some point. Alexander Rakić, on the flip side of this thing, is in the young crop of kids who everyone is calling out to be the next guy to dethrone Jon Jones. And now, I was guilty of that when it came to Dominic Reyes. I've since slowed my roll a little bit on that after seeing his last couple of fights. I was also guilty of that with our boy, the Brazilian Johnny Walker, but then he got messed up by Corey Anderson, and that flaw that I had not seen before became all too clear, but I was not on that party with Alexander Rakić. Alexander Rakić is 27 years old. He is 12-1 with 9 wins by KO. He trains out of American Top Team, and don't get me wrong, kid's no joke. He's very tall, very long, very athletic. He explodes and blitzes in. He's got good knees from the clinch. He has this really neat step-in, quick uppercut that I like. He's got really fast hands, and he likes to move in and out of range. That's really his whole way of striking. But he also, very much like Doo Ho Choi, leaves his hands low. He relies on his chin. He's actually really hittable. He really relies on head movement and moving in and out of the pocket to avoid strikes, and then just eating them as opposed to parrying them or controlling range the right way. He just has to kind of rely on his toughness. He's gotten hit a lot by the guys that he's fought against, and even when he fought Devin Clark in December of 2018, he got rocked. Devin Clark pieced him up. I mean, it was kind of scary for a minute. He got dropped, and it was like, oh, shit. I mean, it was a bad one, too. He managed to rally from that and came back hard, but he also went to hell and back with Justin Ledet. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that this kid was not something that anybody was too worried about. He also shows a propensity to slow down. His very first UFC fight, I know that was back in 2017, but his only 2 decisions were in 2017 and 2018, so that's all we really have to go off of. He slows down in round 3 badly. He's kind of a front runner. I feel like he's a 205 version of Marlon Moraes. If he finishes you in the first 2.5 minutes, he looks like a world beater, but as soon as you get him out of the first round, he drastically slows down and he doesn't have as well-rounded of a game. You can grind on this guy. You absolutely can grind on this guy. And one thing that really is kind of bothering me here is he flatlined Jimmy Manoa in 40 seconds. Jimmy Manoa was the chinniest 205er on the freaking roster. You knock that guy out and everybody's like, oh, Jon Jones is next. What? Come on, man. Of course he was going to knock out Jimmy Manoa. That was the point. Now he's facing a real fighter, a guy who's fought real high-level competition, a guy who has had to dig deep. He tasted loss and went, I got to fix this. A guy who is embracing the grappling aspect of mixed martial arts, a guy who says, I could knock out a wildebeest if I wanted to, but I'm going to work on taking one down and choking them out instead. Volkan Oezdemir is exactly the kind of guy that I want to bet on. And I think Rakić gets put in his place in this spot. He's the hot commodity now. He's the young, hot thing. He's good looking. The UFC is pushing him. They're giving him favorable opponents. Oezdemir is the wrong gatekeeper for this kid to face. I think this is a spot where they went, let's see if we can pair him up with, say, Volkan Oezdemir or Glover Teixeira. Well, if Glover takes this kid down, he's going to choke him out. So let's give him Volkan Oezdemir because Volkan will stand with him. Well, the way he got clipped, Rakić that is, the way he got clipped by Devin Clark, I think if Volkan Oezdemir clips him, we'll see the return of no time, folks. I think if they stand and bang, Rakić cannot control the distance well enough to keep Oezdemir off him. Oezdemir controls range far better than Rakić controls range. And the way Volkan Oezdemir was stomping down Dominic Reyes, cornering him, cutting him off, making sure he stayed where he could hit him, if he does that to Rakić, Rakić is going out. So then if Rakić decides to wrestle this thing, you know who's going to gas first? Rakić is going to gas first. And if Volkan Oezdemir is on top of you, he's going to pound you the fuck out. I am really pumped about this fight. It was another one where at first glance, I was like, oh yeah, of course they want Rakić to win this one. And then I dug into it and went, damn, dude, I see a path here. So I have tweeted out earlier today, I am on Volkan Oezdemir. I got him at plus 125, and I love this spot. He's a very short dog, but I think he has every option in the book to win this fight. I think he's got a good enough chin. He's incredibly durable. Only got TKO'd by Daniel freaking Cormier, and that was because Daniel Cormier is Daniel damn Cormier. Nobody else has been able to rock or knock this guy out. He's been able to wear the damage from everybody else. And not only that, he's been able to hammer back harder than almost anybody in the division. If Rakić slips up once, Oezdemir is going to knock his head off. And I don't think that Rakić can hold up over 15 minutes and try and outpoint someone like Oezdemir. I think it's a bad stylistic matchup. Let's go. No time. Plus 125. And now we have finally made it to the main event of the evening where Frankie, the answer Edgar, former 155-pound champion, takes on Chan Sung-Jun, the freaking Korean zombie, who is the new flavor at 145 after knocking out Moicano in 1 minute. Holy crap, what a fight. This is one that I hate. I absolutely hate from the fan perspective of Frankie Edgar. I don't know why he is taking this fight. All props to him going all Cowboy Cerrone on us and stepping in to save a card when it loses a guy last second like this. But I mean, he's dropping down to 135, man. That's well documented that he's dropping down to 135. I don't really need to break down the skill set of Frankie Edgar for you. If you've seen any UFC fights, you know what this guy is about. High-level wrestling, high pressure, high pace constantly, good boxing, mixes in leg kicks, but mostly works with his hands. He is a point fighter these days. He doesn't seem to have the concussive force that he used to have at 155 since dropping down. He relies more on his speed and takedowns. Yes, if he gets you on the mat, he can TKO you, kind of like he did to Yair Rodriguez and just big brother you. But I don't know if he's going to be able to do that to Chan Sung-Jun. Now, the Korean Zombie on the flip side of this thing is a big 155er. He's going to have a height and reach and size advantage here. The last time we saw Frankie deal with that, he got knocked out by Brian Ortega in the first round. On top of that, Chan Sung-Jun has knockout power like no other. What he did to Dennis Bermudez, what he did to Moicano, the way he roughed up Yair Rodriguez for a full 25 minutes before that insane up elbow clipped him in literally the last second of the fight. I mean, this dude's something else. He's got great footwork. He's going to be able to keep pace with Frankie. I don't know if Frankie will be able to take him down. And the way Frankie's going these days, I mean, he's getting older. And all of those wars are finally starting to catch up to him. He's 38 years old. He's dropping weight classes at the end of his career, which I'm well documented on record stating that I do not like when fighters do that. And he took a lot of damage from Ortega and Swanson and Holloway. Those are his last 3 fights. I mean, he's only fought once in 2019, so it's not recent damage, really. I mean, it was back in July, but still, he's had a lot of damage over the course of his entire career. I mean, just think back to those Gray Maynard near knockouts that he got saved from. The refs aren't going to let him stumble around the cage like that when he gets rocked anymore, not at 40 years old. And what we saw from, like I said, the Brian Ortega fight is he can't anymore, because when he's stumbling around like that, the second, the third, the fourth shot that gets through, he drops to those now. I think Korean Zombie puts him out. I think that I just don't think that Frankie Edgar's wrestling is going to be able to make a big enough difference in this fight. I think Chan Sung-Jung is too explosive. I think he's too fast. I think his hands are way too heavy for this fight. And I think Frankie is taking a quick paycheck, and he's going to take a quick ambulance ride to the hospital. I think that we are going to use the Korean Zombie to close out our parlay with Omar Morales. We had Omar Morales at minus 185. Chan Sung-Jung, the Korean Zombie, right now, you can get him at about minus 180. That parlay will give us a plus 140 payout, and I freaking love it. We're going to learn from our last couple fights. I'm not taking inside the distance. I'm not taking by decision. We're going to go back to Old Faithful and parlay these two guys that should just get it done. Whether they get it done inside the distance or not, I couldn't care less as long as they win the damn fight for me. Don't forget, these fights are at 2 freaking a.m., so unless you're planning on lighting up the fireball and pulling an all-nighter, you better tape it, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to watch these things until way after I'll wake up and see what the wins and losses looks like. We have got 4 picks, ladies and gentlemen. 4 picks for UFC South Korea. We've got Matt Schnell kicking the night off at plus 179. We're going to rock with Charles Jourdain to show up and dethrone Choi in his own backyard at plus 245. Volkan Oezdemir to play the gatekeeper and show Rakić that he needs a little more work before he's ready for the big dogs at plus 125. And then we will parlay Omar Morales earlier in the evening with the Korean Zombie Chan Sung-Jung for a plus 140 payout. We're looking for 2, that's right, 2 wins. If we get 3 or even 4, then we are rolling. Now, I may add a couple of additional picks. Keep an eye out on my Twitter as the props and the totals come out later in the week. Good luck, everybody, on the final week of fantasy football. Yours truly is in the finals of my Big Buy-In Dynasty League, so wish me some luck. Hit me up at DieHard MMA Pod. Love you all. We're going to bounce back. Let's end 2019 strong, and let's roll.